Hello, Kids Cook Real Food. Katie Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector. And I have to tell you, one subject that just keeps popping up its head with my interview guests year after year is anxiety. Today, I'm thrilled to host Dr. Uma Naidoo to talk about that and a whole bunch about the brain. Put your science geek hats on, friends. Dr. Uma, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Katie. I'm really excited to talk with you.
Well, and you have this amazing background. Okay, my friends, in Dr. Uma's bio, we will learn that she's a Harvard trained psychiatrist, professional chef, graduating with her culinary school's most coveted award, and a trained nutrition specialist. So Michelin-starred chef David Booley describes her as the world's first triple threat in food and medicine. And I always love that when people like pull in the different disciplines. It's going to be really good. And so Dr. Uma is actually a specialist in the field of nutritional psychiatry, which is kind of incredibly new and cutting edge. She's the best-selling author of the book, This Is Your Brain on Food. And her new book, Calm Your Mind with Food, is coming out December 26th, 2023. So if you're listening to this right away, that's coming right up. Otherwise, get the book. This is a groundbreaking guide where Dr. Uma Naidoo presents cutting-edge research about the ways anxiety is rooted in the brain, in the gut, in the immune system, and in the metabolism, because nothing is black and white and uncomplicated in the human body, right? So
True.
I love when like you're addicted to learning. That's clear. Those are my favorite interview guests. So Dr. Uma, talk about, like your childhood passions and your adult passions and how you ended up with this triple threat experience.
So I love that question, Katie, because I love to say to people something that did happen when I was a kid, which is I was kind of a preschool dropout. I absolutely refused to go. How I got away with it, still don't know, but I wanted to hang out with my maternal grandmother. Actually, my first book was dedicated to her. When my mom was in medical school, I would hang out with her, and it was the most amount of fun because I'd watch her cook and I would clean, help her clean the vegetables and eat with my grandparents. And to entertain me, they teach me fun things like, yoga and meditation. So it was a cool time in my life, and that really also really created a lot of memories around food and how I eat. Also, family that had a lot of scientists and doctors and also Ayurvedic practitioners. So those things kind of came naturally with me when I went to medical school, where I also identified, especially in mental health, that as I was being asked to prescribe really strong medications which affect our metabolism, our weight, and so many things, they're also life-saving to many people. But no one was asking about what someone ate. There was a box to check off someone's weight or height, but there wasn't much more. And it was a real gap. So that really led me down a path of studying nutrition because we don't learn enough in medical school, going to culinary school, which was just following a passion because Julia Child was my food hero, and working in mental health because I love working with people.
The background is amazing. And I love that it sounds like you had a love of cooking where like most of us would just cook, but instead you went to culinary school, got the whole certificate just kind of for fun. Was that your hobby job?
It's so true because I also that great family I grew up with. Um, Everyone cooked. My grandmother cooked. My mom cooked. My aunts, my older cousins cooked. So I would kind of hang around tasting and helping, but really not cooking. And so my cooking experience and journey started late in life, but I loved food. I always wanted to be around food. So I would get recipes and learn them and try them and fail at them and improve and that kind of stuff. But it really became very much my go-to almost relaxation time. And I think some people love cooking, some people don't, and I happen to love it. And when I realized it was the time of my day I looked forward to, it was almost meditative, it was my space, I realized I had to follow that passion. And when I actually learned that Julia Child had an entire career before she went to culinary school, which made her famous, I thought, hey, why don't I try? There isn't an age associated with this. So it was just something I wanted to do better because I loved it so much.
It's the perfect intersection with what you do and the Harvard training. What is nutritional psychiatry? It's kind of an emerging field, and I doubt many people have heard it
Yeah.
before.
It is. It's a newer field. Nutritional psychiatry is the use of healthy whole foods and nutrients to improve your mental well-being, and is meant to work in collaboration with medications, very important psychotherapy that you may already be engaged in. So it's really one of the additional tools in your toolkit for mental well-being.
It makes so much sense. So many people say that their doctors might say, well, it doesn't really matter what you eat. Here, take this pill that you'll also put in your mouth and down into your gut, and that will help you. So it makes so much sense to me. In your first book, sort of is global about how food affects the brain in general.
Mhm.
This new one is dialing in on anxiety. So the new book's called Calm Your Mind with Food. Why did you choose anxiety as your focus? And can you talk about,
Yeah,
yeah, what anxiety really is from that brain-based
yeah.
perspective?
Yeah. So, during the pandemic was when the idea of the second book really emerged, and it really came out of the work that I was doing, and what I was seeing in my clinic and my virtual clinic was so much anxiety. Then the research showed this to be true, because we knew that even pre-pandemic, anxiety disorders are the most common mental illness in the world. And then during the pandemic, research was done, which was published in the Lancet, which is a tier one journal, and they found that anxiety disorders grew by 25%. But alongside that, what we also realized that globally, more than 70% of people with mental illness never received treatment from a healthcare professional. So putting those facts together, I really just believed, Katie, that we needed more solutions. We needed more solutions for people, because anxiety just feels like it's everywhere. Everyone has a touch of it. Everyone is talking about it, and I think that it's important for us to understand a few things. One, that I'll come to this later, but not all anxiety is bad. But I think the parts that we want to try to help ourselves with is when it becomes so troublesome that we can't function. So if we're not able to get up and go to work, get out of bed, go to a Zoom meeting, go to an in-person meeting, where it's really disrupting our function, and we are so stressed by it, that becomes something we want to attend to. You know, Studying for an exam and making sure you stay up enough hours to get your work covered, sleep, and then write that exam and do well and pass and get a great grade. That's helpful stress. That's stress that's driving you in a good direction. It's the times when it has more of a negative spin that we want to be careful. The way that people experience it in their body can be quite different. I've had people present with poor sleep, wake up with a knot on their stomach, wake up with sweaty palms, or out of the blue, just feel a wave of anxiety come over them and they don't know where it's from, or precipitated by something specific, and then they fly into a panic and just almost unable to catch themselves. So people experience this in many different ways. And what I go through in the book is the different descriptions and kind of breaking it down for people, because it's important for us to understand what it is, and then how are the science behind it, and then what are the things you can do, and why are micro and macronutrients so important, and why is understanding the immune system to the extent that it's related to this important. And that's really how I want people to think about it, and not be afraid of it, but find a way to embrace it so we can kind of get through it together.
That all makes a lot of sense to me. What happens in the brain to take someone from something is happening that's a little stressful and it's giving me that good push forward to the overwhelm that shuts us down?
Yeah. We know that the sort of center of anxiety is the amygdala and the hippocampus. One of the things that I feel is fascinating for people to actually understand is, while we may not know exactly which switch gets flipped, what we do know in relation to food is where metabolism is connected in the brain is also where anxiety is connected. And when we put these facts together, we realize that our metabolism also drives anxiety. Now, where we know that obesity and overweight issues in the United States are also on the rise, and we also see that anxiety is on the rise, we start to figure, well, maybe there's an actual scientific connection here. So what I also want people to understand is it's not about, eat this, not that, or that type of mentality. It's more times we can eat healthier foods, the better our metabolism, the less we're going to head towards type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance, and the less anxious we will be. So we know that there's a correlation there. Um, and I feel like that's just not something we've known or understood, and I feel is an important part of what I'm really trying to share with this book.
Could you give us a little sneak preview? Are there certain anxiety reduction foods that help, impact that day? Or is this more, what are we, I mean, is this more just like changing our metabolism? Help me see the vision here.
Sure. So the firstly, it's a great question. It's a marathon and not a sprint. So I don't have a fancy superfood or other food that's going to take away your anxiety. It's more of how are you going to adjust things in your life, in your diet, in your lifestyle. Maybe, for example, it's learning a breathwork exercise that you can do when that panic overwhelms you. Maybe it's incorporating certain cruciferous vegetables into your diet in a more wholesome way, more consistently, so that over time you're just having more servings of vegetables, more colors on your plate. I developed a salad called the kaleidoscope salad in the book. And it's a special recipe because I wanted people to understand it's not just, the colors of the rainbow. The rainbow is beautiful, but it has a specific number of colors. A kaleidoscope has so many different colors, and it really represents in a single plant or different plants that you put on your plate, or berries or fruit, that there are so many polyphenols that are helping your gut and helping your brain. So I think the another sneak peek I can give you is that there are very fun recipes, combining my sort of own culture, being Asian, and the fact that the Mediterranean diet has been tried and tested and proven to help in mental well-being, and I've put that together with a lot of Asian combination spices. And there are also 6 pillars of anxieties, of how we can work using nutritional psychiatry for anxiety. One of those pillars is eat whole to be whole. So eat the orange, skip the store-bought orange juice. And another one is lean into those kaleidoscope of colors, excuse me.
Eat whole to be whole. That's so easy to remember. And obviously it makes so much sense that the closer we are to the plant or the animal from which our food has come, the better adapted our own bodies and our own brains are going to be. It makes so much sense. I love that.
Yeah, and then we go through more pillars in the book, but you'll find them there also a protocol and kind of a shopping list. So you can head to the supermarket with the list and choose the best foods for anxiety.
Okay. I'm really curious about kids because,
Mhm.
we talk a lot to parents, and here at Kids Cook Real Food, we're teaching kids to cook and make friends with their food, make friends with their vegetables. And it's alarming to me the way the statistics have increased on
Mhm.
anxiety, particularly with our teens and even our little ones, even these like pre-fifth graders, single digit ages. It that feels out of possibility to me. Why
Mm.
do you think even our little tiniest ones are somehow getting this anxiety that we used to only see in adults or maybe older teens?
You're so right. We're seeing it in even younger ages now. The study published in JAMA, conducted at Harvard in emergency rooms in one of our pediatric hospitals, showed that youth ages, I think it was 5 to 17, had so much of a higher rate of visits during the pandemic, more often in girls, and many of them actually ended up getting hospitalized. So we know that it is rife and it feels like it's everywhere. I don't think we can ignore what happened during the pandemic, but I will say that one of the issues is probably the food that we're eating and the level of processed, ultra processed foods that are just in our environment, which are hard to avoid. So I was thinking about it, and I want I want parents, families, kids to have some foods on their fingertips that they can go to for their brain and to help calm their mind. And I came up with the mnemonic because, only when I got to medical school was learning these lists. But it's brainchild, and if you want, I'll run through it really quickly. But it's things you can keep in your fingertips, or in your
We love
shopping
it.
cart.
Yes, I love a good
So
mnemonics. Run us through it.
great. B is for B vitamins because we know those vitamins. We know those B vitamins are so important. Vitamin B12 is in leafy greens, and leafy greens are rich in folate. Folate is so important for our brain. Berries is the other B. R is for the rainbow of colors. We've mentioned that I like to call a kaleidoscope, but even just thinking about the rainbow and your shopping cart and different vegetables, super important. A is for antioxidants. I is for iron and iodine. Now, it turns out many children are deficient in iron, and this is linked to a higher level of anxiety. So making sure they have iron-rich foods, super important. An important nutrient for them to have through, leafy greens and different vegetables, but also animal sources of protein. And is for nutrients, because many Americans are actually deficient in magnesium, and we don't even realize it, as well as other nutrients. So just making sure that there's a balance to that nutritional psychiatry plate, to the number of things we eat in, will improve the nutrients that we need. But I break down in the book all the micro and macronutrients and where you can get them from. Now we go to child. C is for choline, which you get from eggs. A great source of eggs if you consume them, and vitamin C. By the way, kiwi fruit and red bell peppers, some of the richest sources of vitamin C, including clementines and oranges and your citrus fruit. H is for hydration. So one of the things is, are kids drinking enough water? Because if they're drinking soda or juices all the time, they're not consuming enough water, and hydration could be an easy fix. So finding a little sustainable water bottle for them, encouraging that as a habit, could be really good for us to start to integrate. The I is for insulin and blood sugar control, because we now know metabolism is linked to so many of these conditions. We know that inflammation in the gut leads to inflammation in the brain, and you see an uptick of things like mood and anxiety. So eating the right foods and balancing our insulin and having our blood sugar in control, in other words, metabolism, becomes really important. So the more times we're encouraging those whole foods, like eat the orange, skip the store-bought orange juice, that becomes important. L, less processed foods. So less of the foods that are boxed with tons of ingredients, the names of which you don't recognize, and lots of added sugar that you don't need. And D is for vitamin D. Easy hack with vitamin D: spend 10 minutes in outdoors without sunblock or sunscreen, and you get 80% of your vitamin D. And then, you want to apply sunscreen and all of that good stuff. But vitamin D is also hugely important for anxiety and mood disorders. So that's brainchild in a nutshell.
I love that. That's going up on my refrigerator. Vitamin D is an easy one, but it's also a tricky one if you live in the north like I do, because we do not get a lot of sun and we do not have a lot of skin that can show in the winter time. Do you
Because it's so cold.
do you have a
So you're
preferred supplement for vitamin D, or is it found in foods in enough supply?
It's definitely found in foods, but you're absolutely right. In the Northeast, where I live as well, there are many people who could be deficient in vitamin D. So, check with your physician, your doctor, your provider, and you can get it from food, but you might need to find the right supplement. So speak to your doctor about getting, good clean supplement, and maybe that's something you need to take to make sure that you're getting enough of your vitamin D.
Right. And it makes sense to test first. Test, don't guess.
That's right. I say that all the time. Love that. Yeah.
Yes, you're good. And I have so many new questions after brainchild, but let's start quickly with that
Mhm.
gut-brain connection and how if the gut is inflamed, the brain is inflamed, and the microbiome is all thrown in there. What's the most
Yes.
important thing for parents to understand about the gut-brain connection?
That the gut and brain are connected, and that the food we eat definitely impacts the way that we feel, and that our brains can change because of neuroplasticity. And it's been shown in malnourished children that if you adjust their diet towards a healthier norm and you allow them to eat proper foods and proper meals from being malnourished, they actually improve including things like improving their attention and their IQ scores just by changing their diet. So there's always hope for us to adjust from those ultra processed foods.
Always
So what
hope.
I
That's what I love to hear.
correct. So there's always a way to do that. So I think the best way to get these and I'm sorry, Katie, can I know I spoke about the malnourished brain. So what was your question specifically?
Just the importance of the microbiome and if parents need
Yes,
to be taking specific steps to support their kids' microbiome.
great question. So it turns out that inflammation is at the basis of conditions like depression, anxiety, cognitive disorders, and more. That's being shown in research. It's one of the bases. And one of the things that drives inflammation in the body is the food that we eat. So if we're eating fast foods that are deep fried in unhealthy processed seed oils and vegetable oils, it's driving inflammation. Not the same inflammation when we fall on the playground and cut our knee. That's inflammation we need for healing. But this is chronic insidious inflammation. The gut and brain are connected. They originate from the exact same cells in the human embryo. They divide apart to form two organs, and they remain connected by the 10th cranial nerve, the vagus nerve, which is a two-way text messaging system, but really texting and messaging about neurotransmitters like serotonin, otherwise called the happiness hormone. So we need to understand these organs are connected, they're communicating all the time. One of the things that affects what they're communicating is the food that we eat. So if we are mostly eating fast foods every single day and cookies and candy all day long and drinking soda, we are actually driving inflammation in the body. The gut microbes are not nourished. The bad microbes are nourished. There are trillions of microbes in the gut microbiome. And the bad microbes are nourished. And when they are nourished, they really upset that balance in the gut and leads us towards dysbiosis or inflammation. When the gut is inflamed, um, the other thing that happens is when we're eating unhealthy food all the time, the breakdown products are more toxic. They damage the cell lining of the gut, which leads to conditions like leaky gut over time or intestinal permeability. And that, it's an ecosystem. So those types of products also reach the brain and inflammation in the brain gets set up. So what parents need to understand, and all of us need to understand, is the way that we eat is one of the things that really can impact or help lower those levels of inflammation, and just moving away from as much processed foods and ultra processed foods as we can towards whole foods when we can is one way that we can help with that.
And certainly parents probably can't seek perfection, most of us, because we live in the world, right? There are these
Yes,
influences.
correct.
Um, in spite of that, I'm super curious because I do think knowledge is power. When you talk about inflammation in the body and the inflammatory foods, is that, I know you use the word chronic, is this sort of the child's diet over a week or a month, or is there any immediate impact? Child eats cookie within a certain number of hours, child's brain is more inflamed. Like, is there
Mm,
a day-to-day
mm.
impact?
So the day-to-day impact is that the microbes respond within a few hours of eating food. And if you're eating cookies and candy, the bad microbes are responding. So you may not have an immediate effect. What's happening is that you're moving towards that negative, the inflammation, the dysbiosis. What I have noticed though clinically is when people complain of conditions like brain fog or poor attention, that afternoon slump, I need one more cup of coffee, I need to get a candy bar, I need something to give me energy. Well, it's often related to what they've been eating. And so it could be the meal that day or the meal that they've been eating that week. So the microbes respond. You may not feel it immediately, but I have noticed an association with certain conditions like brain fog and attention, because people will really have a slump after something they've eaten instead of having energy to feel uplifted and feel better.
It makes sense from a microbe perspective because if you've given the bad microbes what they want and they're all active, they're in some ways they're calling for more, right? They're giving those
Yes.
sugar cravings and it's kind of that slippery slope for the day. Let's talk sugar. Sugar's a tough one and it's everywhere. Like, I wish it wasn't true. I wish we could just say, parents, don't feed your kids sugar, period, end of story.
Right.
That's like,
Right.
you know, so how does the sugar affect the brain's moods, behavior, and anxiety?
Yeah. So, it's the added and refined sugars that really get us. We having, some berries, having a clementine, those are the portions of natural sugars that we do want, in moderation. We really worried about the added sugars in even savory foods like pasta sauce or ketchup or salad dressings that we don't realize. We know from research that while sugar is important for the functioning of the body, we want to moderate the amount that we're consuming. Research has shown that sugar taps into the same dopamine reward pathways as street drugs like cocaine. So when go on a binge of sugar, or have a ton of candy or cookies or um, candy bars, and that's your thing, or that's just what you enjoy, what's happening is that you're setting your brain up to drive those cravings for more, and your body's going to want more. And I think that it's important to understand that over time, that amount of sugar directly impacts our brain. So there's the pathway through metabolism affecting us on a cellular level, affecting insulin, our weight, and all of that. But there's also the craving side of it, and none of these are good for us. So how I like people to think about it is, no one says don't have a piece of cake on your birthday. All I'm saying is think about it, be mindful, do it in moderation. Um, be aware of where you're consuming your sugars from, and try to create a balance around it that's more towards a healthier norm than the candy bar, the candy canes, or the cookies that you like.
And it's an uphill battle. Years ago, I did the
It's
math
hard.
on
It's
if a
hard.
child, a third grader has 25 students in his or her class and they all bring a cupcake and then add in holiday parties, that's 2 pounds of extra sugar in one school year for a
Well,
child. And,
that's right. That's right.
but no,
In
have
addition to
a
everything
dose
else, yeah,
in
yeah,
addition, right? So moderation is
yeah,
that it's kind of a dirty word sometimes. Let's
yeah.
end, Dr. Uma, on a note of hope, though. We hate to end on sugar.
Yes. Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I know that
exactly.
yes, you see cooking and food as a joy. And of course,
I do.
seeking joy really is the opposite of anxiety. So, what do you
Yes.
want parents to hear about how food can be joy and can be joyful in their
Mhm.
families?
I feel like parents need to know that the power is at the end of our fork. So we can make a difference with what we choose, what we eat. And also that the reason I wrote this book is that there's so much hope in, I've added in a supermarketing list, a protocol, recipes to help you along this path, to help your whole family. I want you to know that our brains change all the time because of neuroplasticity. So if you're feeling a certain slump that you and your family are in, you can change that. You just need to, make a small and steady change. Maybe it's replacing that tub of ice cream that everyone is eating every night with, in my first book, I created a recipe for ice creams from banana. You can even make a chocolate flavor with an extra dark natural cacao. And it's great for your brain. It's a great dessert, but it's better than that processed ice cream that you might be eating. So do it that way. Do one thing at a time, and have hope that we can make this better for all of us.
Well, thank you so much for that. I do think brain science gives us so much hope. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing to get those graphs
Thank
about the
you.
anxiety back down. Like that's always the goal is like we've got to get those
Yes, get
numbers,
it
those
done.
percentages down. So Calm Your Mind with Food is the new book coming out late December 2023. If you're listening to this anytime in 24 or beyond, get that book. It's not something you can totally receive in a half-hour interview, but this was a wonderful taste of what you have to share. Thank you again, Dr. Uma.
Thank you so much, Katie. Lovely to talk with you.
You too, Healthy Parenting Connector listeners. Lastly, I am Katie Kimball from Kids Cook Real Food, and I will see you back next week with another expert guest to help you raise those healthy, independent adults.